Before diving into this incredible story, remember to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. Here, every story has something to say, and you won't want to miss a single one. At Greenfield University, a prestigious campus where academic excellence exists alongside social rivalries, Derek Collins thought he was untouchable. As the son of the dean of the sociology department, he was used to his whims and arrogance going unpunished. With his smug smile and his ever-judging eyes, he believed he could humiliate whomever he wanted without ever suffering the consequences. That morning, in the amphitheater bathed in sunlight filtering through the large windows, Derek spotted Jordan Williams, a calm and focused black student, preparing his presentation. Jordan wasn't the type to draw attention to himself, but behind his apparent discretion lay a sharp intelligence and quiet courage. Derek stepped forward, his confident stride drawing the attention of a few curious students. He made a mocking comment to Jordan about his clothing and his accent. Derek's mocking murmur echoed through the room like a challenge. "You really think you can stand here in front of us like you have something important to say?" Jordan looked up, his expression calm, and answered with quiet confidence, which surprised Derek. No anger, no tremor in his voice, just a defiant calm. It was the first moment Derek realized that Jordan wasn't like the others he was used to bullying. That day, a silent duel began. Derek, confident in his power, thought his taunts would go unpunished. But Jordan, without a word, had just planted the first seed of what would be an unforgettable lesson in humility. Derek's hitherto unpunished arrogance would soon clash with the resilience and intelligence of a young man who refused to be crushed. The afternoon sun streamed through the large windows of the Greenfield University Library, illuminating the rows of books and the students focused on their research. Jordan Williams was sitting at a table near the sociology section, surrounded by notebooks, textbooks, and his laptop. His presentation on social inequalities had to be ready for the next day, and he was working with meticulous rigor, noting every reference, every quote. That's when Derek Collins walked in. Derek had the kind of presence that filled the room even before he spoke. His confident stride, his smug smile, and the way he looked down on others as if they were inferior. He spotted Jordan and approached, his shoes clicking on the marble floor. "Hey, Jordan, is that it?" Derek said sarcastically, drawing the attention of a few students nearby. "Are you still spending your days copying from books? Do you really think anyone's going to listen to your presentation tomorrow?" Jordan looked up, a slight frown, but no sign of fear. He put down his pen, took a deep breath, and calmly replied, "I'm working to be ready. If you want to participate, you can sit down and contribute, instead of criticizing without any basis." Derek burst into mocking laughter, shocked by Jordan's composure. "Contribute? Me? But you know I have nothing to learn from you." He sat down opposite him without asking permission, arrogantly placing his bag on the table. "Honestly, do you really think your little ideas are going to impress anyone here?" Jordan gave a faint, almost imperceptible smile and returned to his notes. He had learned not to react to provocation with anger. His eyes, calm but determined, were fixed on Derek. He knew that any impulsive response would give Derek exactly what he wanted, a show. Yet Derek didn't give up. He continued to make remarks, trying to ridicule Jordan in front of the others. But the more he spoke, the more he was met with Jordan's quiet silence and self-assurance. The other students, who at first seemed impressed by Derek's audacity, began to notice the contrast between Derek's arrogance and Jordan's composure. This was their first confrontation. Derek thought he could humiliate Jordan in a few words, but he didn't realize he'd just met someone who wouldn't be easily intimidated. The duel had barely begun, and already the library had witnessed a silent lesson. Arrogance can be impressive at first, but it doesn't always withstand dignity and patience. The next morning, the Greenfield University lecture hall was filled with students who had come for the sociology class. Sunlight streamed through the large windows, illuminating the rows of seats and the whiteboard where the Professor Dr. Emily Harper was about to write the course outline. Derek Collins entered with his usual self-assurance, a smug smile on his lips. He had decided that today would be the day he would humiliate Jordan Williams in front of everyone. His plan, to interrupt Jordan's presentation and ridicule his ideas to demonstrate his intellectual superiority. Jordan, for his part, calmly took his place at the lectern, prepared and confident. He knew Derek would try something and planned to remain in control, letting his work speak for itself. When Derek stood up, interrupting Jordan mid-sentence, the room held its breath. "Wait a second. You actually dare present this to us?" he said with a sarcastic laugh. "Honestly, who could take this seriously?" Jordan looked up at him, undeterred. "I urge you to listen to the end before judging, Derek. Arguments and facts matter more than prejudices or personal opinions." His voice was firm, calm, and carried throughout the lecture hall. Derek, irritated by the lack of fearful reaction, tried to make the class laugh by making sarcastic comments and mimicking Jordan's tone. But every time Derek spoke, Jordan echoed his ideas with clarity and precision, demonstrating not only his knowledge of the subject but also his ability to remain in control of the situation. The students began to whisper among themselves, some astonished by Jordan's quiet strength. Even Professor Harper, usually reserved, offered an approving smile, impressed by how Jordan was handling Derek's arrogance. At the end of the presentation, Jordan concluded eloquently, calmly answering all the questions, including those Derek had thrown at him with disdain. A respectful silence fell over the room. For the first time, Derek felt unsettled. His mockery had had no effect. Worse still, it had exposed his own weaknesses. That day, Derek's reputation began to waver in the face of Jordan's dignity and perseverance. The arrogant student who thought he could humiliate a classmate without consequence had just encountered a force he couldn't control. After Derek's failed attempt to humiliate him in front of the entire class, Jordan knew he couldn't remain passive. He wasn't seeking revenge through verbal aggression, but through intelligence and strategy. For the next few days, he focused on his research project, a collaborative work on social inequality, in which Derek was involved as an assistant. Jordan began by meticulously compiling all the necessary data, case studies, statistics, academic references, and critical analyses. Each element was chosen to demonstrate the depth of his understanding and his ability to synthesize complex information. He knew that Derek, used to impressing with superficial words, would be unable to keep up with this rigor. One afternoon, in the group study room, Derek tried to regain control. "Listen, Jordan. I think you're taking yourself too seriously. You should just follow my ideas, it'll be faster," he said in that condescending tone he always used. Jordan, unperturbed, calmly replied, "Derek, if you want to truly contribute to the project, you'll have to follow academic rules and respect the facts. I can't correct your inaccuracies every time you make a claim without evidence." Derek, surprised by Jordan's firm tone, attempted a forced smile. But he began to feel that his reputation as an arrogant genius was no longer enough. The other members of the group also began to notice Jordan's seriousness and competence, in contrast to Derek's superficial attitude. As the days went by, Jordan continued to refine the project, anticipating Derek's mistakes and correcting his inaccuracies without direct confrontation. He used his patience as a silent weapon. Each of Derek's errors became visible, not through public humiliation, but through the superior quality of Jordan's work. Professor Dr. Emily Harper also took note of this dynamic. She began to take an interest in Jordan's progress and his ability to manage conflict in a mature and strategic manner. She saw in him not only a brilliant student, but also a leader capable of transforming a tense situation into a lesson in resilience and intelligence. For Derek, each of Jordan's quiet victories was a small personal defeat. His hitherto unshakable confidence was beginning to waver. He was realizing for the first time that humiliating someone wasn't always enough. Jordan wasn't just a student, he was a quiet force, capable of fighting back with intelligence and dignity. Thus, the silent duel continued, but this time, Jordan gained the upper hand, not through anger, but through self-control and the rigor of his work. Derek would soon understand that arrogance could backfire on the one who wields it. A few weeks after the confrontation in the amphitheater, Jordan realized that to counter Derek in a lasting way, he needed to surround himself with people capable of seeing the truth and supporting his work. He grew closer to Samantha Reed and Michael Thompson, two influential and respected students on campus, known for their seriousness and integrity, began to develop a strategy for the group project, in which Derek would be involved against his will. Jordan wasn't trying to publicly humiliate Derek this time. He simply wanted to demonstrate, through his actions and the quality of his work, that Derek's arrogance couldn't overcome rigor and intelligence. With Samantha and Michael, he divided the project into specific tasks, assigning each person a clear role. Derek, despite being appointed assistant, was confined to simpler tasks, where his mistakes could easily be corrected by Jordan if necessary. The first day of group work was revealing. Derek immediately tried to assert his authority, criticizing Jordan's choices and suggesting unfounded changes. But Jordan, calm and methodical, explained to Derek why his ideas lacked coherence and offered alternatives based on reliable sources. Samantha and Michael watched, impressed by Jordan's composure, and began subtly supporting his arguments. As the weeks passed, this silent alliance grew stronger. The other students in the group began to notice that Derek wasn't infallible and that Jordan possessed a clear and structured vision. Even Dr. Emily Harper, the professor overseeing the project, observed with satisfaction how Jordan managed to channel tensions and transform confrontation into productivity. One afternoon, Derek, frustrated by his inability to dominate the group, tried to ridicule Jordan in front of his allies. "Seriously, you think everyone is going to follow your ideas?" Jordan, without raising his voice, replied, "I'm not asking for blind obedience. I'm simply asking for adherence to the facts and for working towards a coherent outcome." Jordan's allies, silent but determined, supported him by endorsing his proposals and pointing out the inconsistencies in Derek's. For the first time, Derek felt his social power over the group waning. His arrogance, once enough to intimidate, no longer worked against a united and intelligent front. This chapter of silent confrontation demonstrated an important truth: intelligence and patience, when supported by strong alliances, can shake even the most arrogant. Derek had just discovered that Jordan was not only a brilliant student, but also a strategist capable of transforming his weaknesses into collective strength. The collaborative research project was progressing rapidly, but Derek was beginning to feel the pressure. Every attempt at sabotage or domination was subtly corrected by Jordan, and his mistakes were becoming increasingly obvious to everyone. One afternoon, while the group was working in the seminar room, Derek proposed a significant change to the research plan, believing it might impress Professor Harper. But Jordan, prepared and methodical, analyzed the proposal and identified several fundamental inconsistencies. Calmly, he explained why this approach wouldn't work, using specific data and academic references. "Derek, look at these figures and these sources," Jordan said, pointing to his notes. "If we use this method, our conclusions will be flawed. It's better to stick to the original plan, based on verified facts." Derek tried to protest, but every objection was immediately countered by Jordan with solid arguments. Samantha and Michael, sitting nearby, supported Jordan by validating his analyses and reminding Derek of academic standards. Little by little, Derek felt his authority crumble. His once unshakable confidence was cracking in the face of Jordan's patience and mastery. This situation marked a turning point. Derek began to understand that his arrogance was no longer enough to impose his point of view. Every mistake he made, every criticism ignored, became proof of his own inadequacy in the face of a calm and brilliant student. One evening, Jordan stayed late at the library to finalize the most complex sections of the project. Derek, seeing his influence waning, tried to manipulate some of the data to gain an advantage. But Jordan, anticipating this kind of maneuver, had already prepared rigorous checks. When Derek realized his plan had failed, he felt a mixture of frustration and humiliation. Dr. Emily Harper, observing the increasingly tense interactions between Derek and Jordan, decided to intervene subtly. She praised Jordan's rigor and perseverance in front of the group, emphasizing the importance of methodical work and adherence to facts. Derek, unwittingly, was thus exposed to both admiration for Jordan and the implicit acknowledgement of his own failure. This experience taught Derek a crucial lesson: arrogance without competence leads only to failure. Jordan, on the other hand, demonstrated that intelligence, patience, and perseverance could not only resist arrogance but transform it into evidence of one's own weakness. Thus, the group dynamic began to change irreversibly. Jordan consolidated his position not through direct confrontation, but through the quiet superiority of his work and the wisdom of his actions. Derek, on the other hand, began the slow journey of recognizing his limitations and the burden of his arrogance. A few weeks later, Derek felt he could no longer tolerate Jordan's growing influence. Each success of the team project only served to highlight his inability to control the situation. His frustration grew, and he decided to provoke a direct confrontation, hoping to finally humiliate Jordan publicly. It was a Friday afternoon. The group was gathered in the seminar room to finalize their project presentation to Dr. Emily Harper and the rest of the class. Derek chose this moment to speak arrogantly. "Jordan, do you really think everyone is going to accept your ideas without saying a word? I'll show you there's a proper way to present a project." Jordan looked up calmly and replied in a firm but composed voice, "Derek, the only way to convince others is to present specific facts and a solid argument. If you want to participate, do it seriously." Derek tried to interrupt, but Jordan had prepared every detail. Each attempt by Derek to deflect attention or criticize his data was countered by clear explanations, solid evidence, and relevant examples. Samantha and Michael subtly supported Jordan, reinforcing the credibility of his answers and highlighting Derek's failure. As the confrontation progressed, the students' murmurs grew louder. Some began to mentally applaud Jordan for his composure, while Derek saw his image as an arrogant leader crumble before their eyes. At one point, Derek, exasperated, attempted one last provocation. "Has no one ever told you that you're too serious, Jordan?" Jordan smiled slightly and calmly replied, "It's better to be serious and precise than pretentious and ignorant, Derek." The silence that followed this reply was heavy with meaning. For the first time, Derek felt completely powerless. All his attempts to intimidate Jordan had failed, and he understood that his arrogance, once his most powerful weapon, was now useless. Dr. Harper watched the scene with a slight, approving smile. She knew this moment marked a turning point. Derek had just met a student who would not be dominated, and who possessed not only the intelligence, but also the calm and maturity to transform every confrontation into a lesson in humility. That day, the direct confrontation revealed a simple but essential truth: arrogance may create the illusion of temporary superiority, but it crumbles in the face of patience, self-control, and competence. Jordan had just proven, once again, that quiet strength and intellectual rigor can surpass words and apparent power. As the weeks passed, the reputation of Derek Collins, his position on campus, was beginning to falter. The students, once impressed by his arrogance and his status as the dean's son, had started to notice his repeated mistakes and his inability to manage Jordan successfully. Every attempt at domination or mockery backfired. In the university hallways, whispers were rife. Some students chuckled quietly when Derek's failures were mentioned, while others expressed admiration for Jordan and his calm but effective way of responding to arrogance. Even in the cafeteria, discussions about the group project now included praise for Jordan, while Derek became the target of veiled but constant criticism. One day, Derek walked into the library and saw Jordan working with Samantha and Michael. He approached, determined to regain control. "Jordan, I don't understand why everyone is following you around like you're the only one capable of doing this project," he said, attempting a sarcastic remark. Jordan looked up and calmly replied, "It's not about following someone, Derek. It's about doing the job properly. Those who recognize effort and precision simply do what makes sense." Derek felt a pang of humiliation. Not only was Jordan refusing to submit, but he was actively earning the respect of others. Jordan's allies, Samantha and Michael, openly supported him this time, reinforcing his natural authority. Derek understood, for the first time, that his image as a charismatic leader was crumbling before his very eyes. At every project meeting, every presentation, Derek saw his influence wane. Even some professors, usually neutral in student conflicts, began to notice the scope of Jordan's work and to value his rigor and maturity. Derek, used to everything being easy for him thanks to his name and his arrogance, found himself isolated and helpless for the first time. Derek's social downfall was gradual but irreversible. The students he thought he admired for his audacity began to avoid him or openly contradict him. Jordan, on the other hand, earned the silent but profound respect of the entire university community, proving that merit and integrity always triumph over arrogance. This chapter marked a decisive turning point. Derek understood that arrogance, even if tolerated for a long time, can crumble in the face of patience, competence, and wisdom, and Jordan became the living example of this truth on campus. The end of the semester was approaching, and with it, the Greenfield University Research Project presentation ceremony. The main auditorium was filled with professors, students, and administrative staff. It was the moment when the best work was recognized, and when everyone had the chance to shine in front of the entire university. Derek Collins entered, confident and convinced that he would finally shine and demonstrate his superiority. He believed that his social standing and arrogance would overshadow Jordan and that, in front of everyone, he could humiliate him once and for all. When Jordan took to the stage to present the group project, Derek couldn't help but mutter a few sarcastic remarks, hoping to deflect attention and create an awkward moment. But Jordan, true to form, began his presentation calmly and confidently. Every slide, every graph, every data point was presented with clarity and precision. Jordan explained the project, demonstrating his deep understanding and complete mastery of the subject. The professors took notes, the students listened attentively, and Derek began to feel his power waning. When Derek tried to intervene to correct Jordan, the latter replied politely but firmly, "Derek, if you have suggestions based on facts, I'm ready to hear them. Otherwise, it's best to let the presentation continue." A respectful silence filled the amphitheater. Murmurs of admiration could be heard among the students, and even Dr. Emily Harper offered an approving smile. Derek realized that not only was his attempt at ridicule failing, but he was becoming the center of the humiliation. At the end of the presentation, Jordan received a standing ovation. The enthusiastic applause recognized his intelligence, patience, and ability to handle arrogance with composure. Derek remained frozen, red with anger and embarrassment, aware that his reputation had suffered an irreparable blow. That day, Derek Collins understood the power of humility and competence. Jordan Williams, through his quiet strength and integrity, had transformed every attempt at humiliation into proof of intellectual and moral superiority. Derek's ultimate public humiliation marked the end of his unpunished arrogance and made Jordan an inspiring example for the entire academic community. After the public humiliation at the ceremony, Derek Collins felt truly vulnerable for the first time. His classmates whispered behind his back, some still laughed at his failed attempts to dominate Jordan, and his image as a charismatic leader was rapidly crumbling. In his dorm room, Derek sat alone, staring at the wall in front of him. For the first time, he wondered, how could I have believed that arrogance was enough? He thought back to each confrontation with Jordan, each failed taunt, each attempt at manipulation that had been subtly thwarted. Each event was now irrefutable proof of his limitations. His parents, used to seeing him triumph thanks to his name and status, were unable to console him. Derek understood that this time, no outside influence could repair his image. He had to face his mistakes and the impact of his arrogance. The next day on campus, Derek watched Jordan with a mixture of admiration and envy. Jordan continued to work calmly, focused on his goals, without seeking to humiliate or belittle anyone. The students respected Jordan, not out of fear, but out of recognition of his intelligence and dignity. Derek then felt a heavy weight on his conscience. He had wasted weeks trying to put down someone far superior to him. In the days that followed, Derek tentatively tried to reconnect with Jordan. He began with awkward apologies, acknowledging some of his mistakes. Jordan, true to his mature nature, responded cautiously. He agreed to a limited reconciliation, setting clear boundaries while demonstrating his openness to respectful and constructive behavior. This period was a crucial lesson for Derek. He understood that respect is not earned through fear or arrogance, but through humility, hard work, and recognizing the talents of others. The regret he felt was profound, but necessary. He had just experienced the true consequences of his actions. Jordan, for his part, continued to advance, demonstrating that dignity, patience, and intelligence could transform a confrontation into a moral victory. Derek had just learned, to his cost, that arrogance may be temporarily seductive, but that only competence and lasting wisdom inspire true respect. The following weeks were a turning point for Derek Collins. The once arrogant and self-assured young man began to seriously reflect on his behavior and choices. He realized that his arrogance, far from serving him, had ruined his reputation and damaged his relationships with his classmates. One afternoon, he went to find Jordan in the library. His approach was hesitant, but sincere. "Jordan, I want to apologize for everything I've done. I was arrogant, unfair, and I didn't respect your work or your intelligence." Jordan looked up, his expression serious but open. "Derek, I can't erase the past, but I can accept that you're trying to change. From now on, I want to see concrete actions, not just words." This marked the beginning of a transformation for Derek. He began to work seriously, to listen to his classmates, and to respect the work of others. Little by little, he rebuilt his reputation, no longer through arrogance, but through humility and diligence. The other students began to notice this change, and Derek truly began to learn from his mistakes. Jordan, for his part, emerged from this experience a stronger person. His patience, intelligence, and quiet strength not only allowed him to resist Derek's arrogance but also inspired him to become a better person. Students and professors alike respected Jordan for his self-control and his ability to transform conflicts into constructive lessons. At the semester's closing ceremony, Jordan received praise for his project and his quiet but effective leadership. Derek, standing in the audience, applauded sincerely, feeling for the first time a deep respect for someone else without jealousy or resentment. The story ended on a note of redemption and learning. Derek had discovered the value of humility and respect, while Jordan had proven that patience, competence, and dignity could triumph over arrogance. On the Greenfield University campus, each had learned an important lesson: true power lies not in dominating others, but in self-control and the ability to inspire by example.